Feel free to check out my TeePublic after the video, and support me on Patreon. Watch till the end of the video for more. This video was possible thanks to my wonderful Patreon supporters. If you'd like to show your support for the channel, then click the link in the description. Where there is light, shadows lurk and fear reigns. Yet by the blade of nights, mankind was given hope. The mid-2000s were quite an interesting period for Tokusatsu. The Godzilla franchise just came to a close, again, after the last two times. Tsuburaya was working to bring life to the End Project, and Toei was still pushing strong with their Kamen Rider and Super Sentai series. But there was a particular mindset that Tokusatsu is slowly starting to fade away once more, with each Godzilla film losing more money than the previous, and the End Project was essentially this botched experiment that sponsors Bandai lost faith in. But hey, Ultraman the Next and Ultraman Nexus are fantastic, so they can f*** off. There weren't any more ambitious productions like Submersion of Japan, as Tokusatsu was being more associated with simply just being children's media. But let's go back to the mid-80s, where Tokusatsu began what I like to call its new wave era, a period where filmmakers like Koji Hashimoto, Shinya Tsukamoto, and Masato Harada set foot into the genre, all thanks to a sudden boom in the media industry. Films like The Return of Godzilla, Tetsuo of the Iron Man, and Gunhead showed that Tokusatsu can still live on. And during the 90s, there was one Tokusatsu filmmaker who stood out from the rest, and that man is Keita Amemiya. Known for his more underground tokusatsu productions like Zeram, Kamen Rider Zeto, and Mechanical Violator Hokkaido, Amemiya has a real knack for telling dark stories with an emphasis on drama with a stylistic flair. Amemiya is also an artist, and a very famous one at that. And him, having a deep respect for both manga and tokusatsu, decided to revisit a beloved icon, being Japan's first superhero, the Golden Bat. Amemiya's take on the Golden Bat was a rather neat modernization with a style akin to the celebratory body paint seen during the Day of the Dead. But as Amemiya kept drawing the Golden Bat, it began to resemble more of a cross between a wolf and a medieval knight. An idea struck Amemiya. Amemiya's more notable tokusatsu works all had this sort of edge of badassery that really helped them stick out from other tokusatsu productions. On one hand, they weren't very family-friendly, as they were more targeted for a mature audience, but there was a beauty in his craft as a filmmaker, blending all sorts of special effects into a neat and cohesive package. All of this, and everything that Amemiya has done, would build up to what is essentially the culmination of his entire career. And after confronting Omnibus, Bandai, and Tohoku News Agency, Amemiya was able to bring life to his dark tokusatsu television series, Garo. Garo is the story of the Makai Knights, warriors who walk the earth to rid the world of these supernatural and demonic creatures known as horrors. So kind of like Highlander, minus the there can only be one part of it. The first series follows a man named Koga, who comes across an aspiring painter named Kaoru who is stained with the blood of a horror. So not only does Koga have to continue hunting down horrors, he must also protect the life of this innocent woman who got caught in the fray, as the fact that she got stained with her blood only attracts other horrors. Koga lets her live in his mansion with him and his cool and fancy butler Gonza as he continues his mission. Now, I know what you're thinking, a generic Monster of the Week series? Well, you'd be dead wrong to assume that anything in Garo is generic. For the mid-2000s, CGI in tokusatsu was still in its infancy. While shoddy without context or a preface, its use is actually quite ambitious for such a production and actually works quite well with the show's tokusatsu elements during its action sequences, especially during the latter parts of the series, as well as one of my favorite moments being the freefall fight between Koga and Rei. And part of that is because each of the actors were actually trained in sword fighting and martial arts, thus the show hardly ever used stunt doubles like in other action-heavy tokusatsu shows. And the direction of supervision of Makoto Yokoyama of Power Rangers fame really adds to the already present expertise on display. Speaking of which, I really adore the effort that was incorporated into the character designs and their personality. Let's take a look at our protagonist Koga, a lone wolf, which perfectly matches his Makai Knight persona. He has such a cold demeanor, but he's never selfish and everything he does is for the sake of humanity, which is appropriate for his gold armor as he's essentially the epitome of a warrior, and without his armor he dons a white coat to present his nobility. And let's take a look at his rival, Rei, who's quite laid back but very reckless and is even willing to put human lives at risk, which is not very warrior-like, but he's still such an extremely skilled fighter, rightfully matching with his silver armor. And without his armor, he's dressed in all black to display his carelessness, and if you look closely, his back posture is slightly more slouched than Koga's as he's more relaxed than uptight. Keita Amemiya and Takayuki Takatani really put a lot of care and effort in these character designs, and it's small little intricate details like that which makes Garo so enjoyable. You can really invest yourselves in these characters with the way they're established and written. Like how Kaoru's an orphan who wishes to become a famous painter like her father, who happened to predestine her encounter with the Gold Makai Knight himself. Even Zaruba, Koga's talking ring, has so much personality and comes off as very memorable. This also ties into the show's themes of fate and destiny and how it's up to us to create our own future and that our actions can have a major influence on others, especially when we go into the bond between Koga and Kaoru. A Makai Knight's mission is to simply kill horrors, but no real rule regarding human lives. It shows that these warriors have a serious by any means approach, and as Koga and Kaoru learn more about one another as the story unfolds, it really allows Koga to truly value human life and not just be the stoic, stone-cold monster killer. Especially when the series would occasionally reference his backstory and his father, who was once a Makai Knight, and I'm sure you know where that's going. While the first half of Garo may come off as just purely setup, there's still enough style, action, and development to keep it interesting. But it is the second half of the show that truly kicks it off, as the story is suddenly driven by lots of emotion and scenarios become more dire. Thanks to writers Megumi Taguchi and Yuji Kobayashi of Ultraman fame for bringing a lot of soul to Amemiya's story. Another aspect to this is the music composed by Shinji Kinoshita, who brings on these pieces that range from being majestic to dreadful in a very similar vein as Susumu Hirasawa's Berserk score. But massive props to these opening themes, as well as the main theme for the show. They perfectly fit what this series is all about. I mean, what more can you expect from Jam Project? But of course, I cannot forget about the horrors, designed by Kamen Rider creature designer Yasushi Nirasawa, and I just absolutely adore how creative they can be with their abilities. One comes from paintings, one has its soul encased in bullet shells, one is a mermaid. There's basically a horror for pretty much about anything, even clowns. But another thing that makes these horrors terrifying is how they're not very different from us, as they all have their own goals and are essentially embodiments of the darkest parts of our humanity, as they feast upon our fear and rage, such as a desire for revenge, a desire for pleasure. Somehow we can connect to these creatures as much as we can with the protagonists, which almost makes the human disguises of these horrors more riveting. Garo is a series that would prove itself to be a massive hit, spawning countless sequels and spin-offs, becoming a multimedia franchise. It's honestly a shame that whenever people talk about Tokusatsu franchises, yeah, you have the usual suspects like Godzilla, Rider, Sentai, and Ultra, but not many people mention Garo. It may not have such a large legacy, but its quality makes it enough to be among their ranks, as it truly has some very memorable aspects to it. Thanks to its dark atmosphere, its soulful narrative, its very engaging and incredibly well-written characters, and intense and ambitious action scenes. Garo is truly the best thing Keita Amemiya has put out in his career as a tokusatsu filmmaker, and I'm glad for the success it received. And I'm also very glad for the support you guys have given to the channel and myself. So thank you guys very much. This video would not have happened without y'all, and I'll get to reviewing Go Rangers soon, don't worry. But if you like what you see, then by all means, support me on Patreon, where for a single $1, your name can appear at the end of every future upload. Other than that, you can also get early access to videos, exclusive content, commissioned video requests, and receive a t-shirt of your choice from my TeePublic, like these designs based on Garo. Also want to give a very special thank you to Ace Maroke for helping me out with this video, and a very special shout out to Laura Fitkin of the Review Roulette podcast for becoming a new patron. And once I reach enough patrons, I'll do a video covering several unmade Godzilla films, so if that's something you'd like to see, then go support me on Patreon. Feel free to like, share, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and this is TitanGoji, signing off. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention Amemiya would bring in AV actresses for the series to bring up the show's maturity.
どうだい? いろいろ喋りすぎちまったかな。この辺でお開きにするとしようか。